Walking down the paint aisle of an art store can be really fun, but it can also be kind of overwhelming. With rows and rows of paint to choose from, how do you know which one is going to be the perfect fit for you? Today I'm going to talk about types of acrylic paint and if you should really splurge on that expensive tube of paint or if the cheap ones will fit the bill. So there's many different types of paint, but two overarching types that you should be aware of are student grade paints and artist or professional grade paints. And that's pretty much what it sounds like. Student grade is geared towards students, so it's much more cheaper, and artist grades are going to be more expensive. But is this a case of you get what you pay for, or can you get away with a generic brand? So the short answer is kind of yes. But before you run out and grab the most expensive paint on the shelf, let's go over what makes these two so different. Student grade paints are made by a number of different brands. The reason why they're so much cheaper is that they actually have more filler or binder in this product, so it's going to have less concentration of pigment. That means they're going to pack less of a punch. They're going to have less coverage, so you need multiple layers for a opaque layer, and they're going to give less impact when you're mixing colors. This can mean duller colors, or they're not going to be as predictable or consistent. Also, it's important to note that student grade paint is going to have a significantly smaller color range. Student grade paint only carries series 1 and 2, so any colors that are series 3 or above are not going to be carried by student grade paint. But if you want a color like cadmium red, which is not series 1 or 2, what you can get is called cadmium red hue, and any color with that hue is going to be not actually cadmium red pigment, but actually a mix of cheaper reds that are going to have a similar effect to cadmium red. When you start mixing 6 or 9 pigments together, it can get a little dulled or grayed out, whereas a more expensive paint will not do that very much. Artist grade paint, as you can assume from what I just said, is much more expensive and has a higher pigment load. The consistency is usually a little thicker and it has like a nice consistency to them like an oil paint would. So if you like to have that really impasto-y thick texture, or if you like to work with a palette knife, an artist grade paint will have a consistency. They also typically have single pigments in them, whereas a cheaper student grade might have 2 or 3 pigments mixed together. Artist grade paints often are made to be more durable in the long run as well. If you watch my conservation restoration video, you'll know that paint can be vulnerable to a lot of different things, but these paints can have certain properties that make them more UV resistant or flexible. My advice is to take a good look at what your experience level is and what you aim to do. If you're just a student and you need to buy paint for a class, for beginning painting for example, and you don't really plan on painting after that, you might want to just get the student grade paint so that you don't invest a ton of money in paint that you may or may not use up. However, you might find that you really like painting, and then in that case you can slowly upgrade your paint to a better quality paint that you enjoy using more. You might want to consider just picking up a tube whenever you finish up a color of student grade paint, and that way you don't have to spend a ton of money all at once. If you've been painting for a while and you've been deliberating whether you should upgrade or not, artist grade paints are definitely going to give you a much nicer quality, and if it's something you really enjoy, it's something you can probably give some serious thought about investing in. Okay, you heard me talk a lot about these guys, but let's see them in action. So I hope you found that useful and learned something cool about paint. If you like this video, you might want to check out some of my other videos. I have one on acrylic versus oil paint, so if you want to know what the differences are, it's kind of similar to this and it helps you decide which one you might like better. And you could also check out my last video on conservation restoration. In addition, I had my 100th subscriber, which is really exciting. Thank you so much all for subscribing, and please subscribe if you haven't. Shout out to Leslie for tweeting me that she was my 100th subscriber. It was so exciting. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.